problem is, a living system, a true living system, only accepts its own solutions. A lot of times proven. We have a large project in Denmark years back where for some reasons we had a whole water systems of a large river. We don't have many, hardly call them rivers, but we have something that we could maybe call a river. And at some point, because of the agricultural industry, it was much easier if that river was a straight line, because then you could cultivate around it much easier. So they did that in the 70s, devastating everything around it. And now they took them 30 years, or us, to put it back, almost 20 years to put it back. Meaning, if you intervene into a system of a living system, be aware that if you want to integrate a solution into a living system, it needs to take part in it. And then you can see how you take a conversation with a river. But I mean, in a living system, it's the same thing. We know it, I know it for a fact, that when my spouse and partner, Valerie, says to me, I have this great idea, her idea is always great, she thinks. And they are, just because I see has been recording it. They are really great, you have a great idea, Valerie. Or me, you know that feeling, someone having an idea and you were not really consulted even. And now the whole thing needs to go there. And then you're like, yeah. The hesitation of acceptance is sometimes a bit slow, right? Or especially for implementation of that idea that you did not take part of. And it's the same, of course, with a living system. It's fully like that, and it's the same with us. We only accept our own solutions. This one is a bit the same. A living system pays attention only to what is meaningful. We actually, as a human species, have the opportunity, it's not an opportunity, what it is, but we have the funny capacity to also pay attention to what is not meaningful. We're the only species that does that. We're the only one. I mean, you will not have, try it with a dog, even worse, try it with a cat. Or where is she? With a rabbit. Try it with a rabbit. Will that take place in something that is not meaningful? I'm not fully sure. But we can as human beings, and therefore I think it's important sometimes to remind ourselves, maybe we also need to pay attention to what is really meaningful, or at least maybe we need to ask, what is meaningful to you before we interact with you or engage with you? When you talked about constructive participation, now I'm having a hard time identifying where you are now, but one of you spoke about constructive participation in the fourfold practice. And this is one of the biggest blockages for constructive participation in a meeting, is because you simply find that most of the meeting is not meaningful. Then you might turn it around saying, ask before you have the meeting, what will be meaningful for you? That's actually the whole idea behind check-in. How do you check in before you sit there and check in on meaningfulness? Another one is a living system, just spoke about it with the Funky, participates in the development of neighbors. We know it in the system that the trees, tall trees, they are shadowing for something else to happen, and in these shadows something else is happening that nurtures the big tree and so on. The systems are interconnected, and that's how they survive. We also know from foresting that when we doesn't secure that biodiversity, now it's become a word, then something else will fail or fall because of that lack of that biodiversity. And there's an active participation. It's not just I'm growing here, you take care of yourself. No, there's an active co-participation there going on. And going on to this as well, in nature, a living system seeks diversity and grows by diversity. In these years, having diversity coming to our doorstep might be good to remember. I'm thinking once in a while that actually what made this whole world we're in, and I still believe we only have one, then that was diversity. That was and the embracement of diversity. So I'm not trying to be political, you decide, but no, I'm not really. I just don't get it. And lastly, what I would like to say, and I'm speaking also to myself here, sorry, is that a living system finding and use what works. A living system does not go for perfectionism. It does not need perfectionism. It needs what works. And if it works, let's not reinvent the dishes here, I should say, or the wheel, if you say in English, it's Danish. So let's reinvent it. If it works, it works. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Let's move on. So a living system, a true living system, will not seek perfectionism. If it works there out in nature, it works, move on. There might be something that is meaningful that we need to pay attention